Ladies and gentlemen, if you have joined us, a very big welcome on the other end. Thank you for staying with us. We are talking about Brexit versus NHS. If there is no deal, what will happen to our NHS? We've had a number of guests in our program tonight, and you've heard from some of them. Right now, we've been joined by two new guests, and they are, on my far right is Spencer Wood, who is an activist with a political party. So Spencer, a very good evening and thank you for coming along to join us.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And we have Elsa Mogensen. Please forgive me if I haven't pronounced it correctly. You are an advocate, a campaigner who is involved with the 3 million.
Yes.
Is that 3 million people or 3 million dollars?
It's we don't have $3 million, unfortunately, not yet.
Okay.
No, it's I work for a campaign group to protect and preserve the rights of EU citizens living in the UK.
3 million, is it?
Yes. So usually we say there are 3.6 million actually,
Right. Okay.
but we were named right after the Brexit referendum when we were set up, and back then we made an estimate. There are 3 million EU citizens, and we're campaigning for those people to be able to continue life as usual after Brexit.
Thank you very much for making the time to come to my program. I really appreciate this. Okay, in that case we shall start off with you then. What is the 3 million campaign, and what is it? What do they actually do? I know you've just said that after the last thing that maybe you could tell us a bit more about them.
Yeah, so we are the leading campaign organisation for EU citizens in the UK. As I said, we were set up just after the referendum to campaign for protecting people's rights. Now that includes the right to access healthcare. It includes not just the right to stay in the UK, but to continue our life as usual. So that would include, the right to bring family to the UK, the right to set up a business, the right to have your qualifications recognised, and all of these things are very important for people to be able to continue their life in the UK and to be treated on an equal footing, and to be able to have a normal professional and family life after Brexit. So we have been campaigning for the post-Brexit status of EU citizens to be guaranteed in law, which Boris Johnson and his new government have refused to do. They've refused to put down legislation to guarantee our rights. And we have also been campaigning for continued access to healthcare and for access to the new immigration status to be as easy and smooth as possible.
And how hopeful are you that it will happen?
Well, right now, with all the talk around no deal, the signs are not very promising. As I said, the current government has refused to legislate in Parliament to guarantee our rights, bring legislation to Parliament to guarantee our rights. And now they're talking about no deal. So the withdrawal agreement that was negotiated by Theresa May included a number of rights, including family reunion, the right to bring family members to the UK, and so on. The right to continue to to have qualifications recognised and so on. There are a whole set of rights that she negotiated, which are now in question.
Right.
And right now,
so they've changed the goalpost.
They have, yeah.
Okay.
They have changed.
I will come back to you, and perhaps we'll talk about a little bit more about this if the time permits. But let me go to Spencer Wood. What are your thoughts on this? What, in terms of the 3 million that she mentioned?
I think this is another Windrush in the making.
Right.
Basically, from November 1st, a lot of 2 million EU citizens, because only 1 million have applied for settled status so far, are going to be in legal limbo. So we have no idea what the Home Office is planning. So you could literally one day be a legal citizen here and then all of a sudden not have any status at all. So you could no longer find employment, housing, and all the other basic rights you need to be able to live in the country. And this is a group of people that have lived here for like some of them 20, 30 years, like enjoying their freedom of movement rights.
Sure. Well, thank you for that. I will come back to you again. Let me just go to Dr. Jessica Potter again. What are the consequences for the EU citizens of introducing checks, if you like? I mean, we talked about it briefly before we went on breaks, but we've just heard from Elsa. What are your thoughts on this?
So we heard last week that the day after Brexit, NHS trusts have been issued with a memo saying that EU citizens will no longer be eligible for free NHS care in the way that they were before.
Can I just stop you here? What is the current arrangement? My understanding is that if you're a EU citizen and you carry a European health card, no matter which European country you're in, you are entitled to a free NHS treatment. Is that correct?
That's correct, but also if you are living here and exercising your treaty rights, you are eligible for free NHS care. So you don't have to hold an EHIT card, you just have to be living here and exercising your treaty rights.
Sure.
Yes, all you have to do is prove that you're resident here and that you are an EU citizen. So the new charges that would be introduced after no deal would apply, the government says, to EU citizens coming in after Brexit Day, and they say that people already living here would continue to have the same rights as they currently have to healthcare. So they slightly rebutted the Times article, but the problem is, as Spencer said, there are a whole lot of people who haven't registered for settled status yet, and who are not going to have time to register.
Just for the benefit of our viewers, can you tell us the difference between a settled status and a non-settled status, please?
Yes, so settled status is basically indefinite leave to remain. Right. It's a version of indefinite leave to remain. So it's given
leave to remain in the UK for an indefinite period?
Yes, that's correct. And Theresa May's government introduced this new status for EU citizens to have a status in UK immigration law after Brexit.
Sure.
And they have made applying for this new status compulsory. So people will have to, in order to stay in the UK, EU citizens who currently don't need any paperwork to be here because of freedom of movement will have to apply for this new status.
And
in UK
will they be charging a fee for this? Or will the government be generating an income from this?
No, there's no fee that's being charged. There was a fee originally after our and other organisations' campaign work. That fee was dropped.
Has been waived off, right?
Yes, but people will have to apply, or their legal status to be in the UK will be removed. That's a very important point to know about.
Could I also just jump in, because you said all people have to do is prove that they're residents here, and actually proving you're a resident here is not that easy, as we found with the Windrush generation. These were people who had been living in the UK for decades and could not prove their and could not prove their residency status. We see homeless people targeted by hostile environment policies, including EU citizens, targeted by hostile environment policies and deported currently, and also healthcare withheld from them too already, and that's before this legislation comes in.
Thank you. Hussein, what do you think about this? You're sitting very quietly listening to all of this.
Yeah, it's
I'm
learning.
Yeah, no, I know, but you work in the NHS in the end care,
End of life. Yes.
end of life. So basically, you wait for people to come to the end of their lifespan, and then
which
basically,
is very sad, but that somebody has to do the service.
So what would happen if you had people who are not perhaps considered to be settled status in the UK? What would you do with them?
At the moment, the NHS works on a discretionary basis. If somebody doesn't have immigration status, regardless if it's Europe or Bangladesh or India, if they don't have status and they're in their end of life, and if they have cancers or whatever, then NHS puts that in under discretionary measure. There are special policies and laws on that, that you cannot deprive them of that medical treatment at their end of life, and they put in everything. But that is just a minute. It has to come to that stage that NHS knows that is no longer going to survive, maybe maximum 3 months, and they put that in. But in terms of the settled and non-settled status, is that it's only a worry at the moment because of the current government saying they might trigger no deal, and if there's no deal, they're going to just come out of it. That's where everything's going to go down, break hell loose, but hopefully we're still hoping that there will be a deal, or there will be a general election, and some people are even talking about bringing no confidence.
Suppose if there is no deal, what is the divorce bill going to be?
If there's a no deal, there's no divorce bill. It's just we come out of it and we just go our way.
But don't we have to pay?
No, they will take us to the courts, and it will be a long process. They will try to take to the courts and things like that, but effectively there's no deal, and you don't get anything, we don't get anything, you just move on.
Can I just jump in there?
Chris,
sorry, can I just quickly say one more thing? On the
Spencer, I think wants to come in back on.
Just a quick one thing about the residency side of thing, that, are you a resident or not? Only on the NHS side of things, it's always access to, as soon as you come to NHS, it's still happening. But if it's social service, a lot of people don't know this. If you're social service cared, then you have to prove that you've been living in that borough for 3 years, or otherwise you don't get service.
Really?
You have to go back to your original borough. So if you're a social service care and you come from Hackney to Hamlets, you don't get it until you've proven that you lived in this borough for 3 years. So it's not an unusual or uncommon thing. It's been practiced in a lower local area, on a government level, on social services, but not on NHS.
So when they say
they're going to bring,
people need social services, and they move from one borough to another, they can't get social services from the borough that
no, it has to come from the host borough.
So it has to come from the host borough.
So if you look at that principle,
but isn't that going to stretch their resources?
It's just another ridiculous way in which we draw boundaries around things that don't have boundaries. Okay,
and
we live fluid lives. We live across the borders of boroughs. We live across the borders of countries now. Many of us have friends and relatives living all over the world, and we work all over the world. And so drawing these boundaries just doesn't work for us every day. And it harms
but what
people.
I'm trying to say is that it's not unheard of, and if they try to bring social service and NHS together, which they're trying to do, this will be an issue.
Chris, Spencer, you want to
pick up on the point you're talking about, what happens with the divorce bill. With the EU's have already been saying, if you ever want a trade deal with them, you're still going to have to pay the 39 billion. We're still going to need to sort out the border in Northern Ireland, and we're still going to need to sort out citizens' rights.
And will it ever happen?
So, if we want to continue trading on a similar arrangement to what we have now with Europe, those are the things we're going to need to sort out. So, what the government's doing is crazy, because it's just putting itself into a corner.
Sure, thank you. You wanted to come in, right?
I think the problem with access to healthcare from EU citizens' point of view, seen in the context of no deal, is that the government has been completely unclear about what people's rights are and how they're supposed to prove them. I mean, Jessica will be able to talk about this as well. But basically, with no deal, you're creating two sets of people. one set of people who came here before Brexit Day, one set of people who come here
after.
under immigration rules after Brexit Day. We don't yet know what entitlements those people will have. The ones who come here after Brexit Day, whether they'll have to pay for healthcare, whether there will be bilateral deals. But there are now two groups of EU citizens who have different sets of rights.
Sure.
Now, if you live in the UK, if you've lived here for 20 years or however long, you will still have to apply for settled status to prove your rights. And if you haven't applied for settled status, there's nothing to distinguish you from between people who have lived here and have those rights but can't prove them, and people who are not entitled to free healthcare. That's why Spencer was talking about a Windrush situation in the making.
Sure.
And we've had pilots run by the government to see whether or not they can use ID to check people's eligibility for NHS, and they failed, and they don't work. And I see people harmed every day by these eligibility requirements, where we are being forced to act as healthcare workers, as border guards, to determine immigration status, when actually our job is to care for people. And although things will absolutely change after Brexit for EU citizens, some EU citizens are already being affected by the NHS charging regulations, because the way that they are implemented are very racialised. And so people are identified based on what I call outward identifiers of difference, so skin colour, accent, the way you dress, and we see that all of the time, and it's horrible for people to experience on both sides.
Sure.
It also goes against the fundamental ethos of NHS, and also against the constitution of it, because it says access at the point of you come into the door of NHS. So that is not the case if that's what's going to happen. But hopefully somebody in government will have sense and say, no, this is not right.
This is not right. Right. Okay. And do you think it will happen?
Well, I mean, I'd just like to support Jessica's point and say doctors shouldn't be border guards. I mean, there is both of our organisations, MedAct and the 3 Million, support the Patients Not Passports campaign, which is against checking immigration status in the NHS.
Sure. I mean, I'm of the opinion if someone needs treatment, it doesn't matter what their status is, they should be treated.
Right. Right. Healthcare is a human right, and we need to look after the people that live in this country, not put them in peril.
Sure. Can I just, because I'm conscious of the time, and we're going to come sadly to the end of our program. Can I just ask Spencer? Do you think we could stop this no deal and save our NHS?
Well, a lot of what's going to happen now is in Parliament, so we really need to kind of lobby the politicians now. So I know John Bercow, the Speaker, is trying to facilitate what's going on in Parliament to try and enable some form of legislation to come forward to try and extend Article 50. But what we can do as people is to write to our MPs. One of the key areas around citizenship rights is actually getting primary legislation to protect those rights. Now the government's refusing to do that, so if we can put a lot of pressure on politicians and hopefully get some movement on that.
Right. What do you think, Elsa?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to add to that everything the government seems to be planning now around no deal is, first of all, it's creating confusion because there are mixed messages. It will lead to discrimination against EU citizens in the health service, in the job market and elsewhere, because there is no clarity around what people's rights are and how they prove them. As Spencer says, we need to have legislation in place, and the 3 million are campaigning for clarity, for the government to counteract discrimination, make sure people are not discriminated against, and for people to be protected in legislation. If you go to our website, the3million.org.uk, we have several different letter writing campaigns where people can contact their MP, write to Priti Patel, and remind her of the promises that were made during the referendum campaign and when Boris Johnson came into government.
Thank you. Hussain, what do you think?
Well, the government is only about 18 people, so they have only 18 voices. But the Parliament has 650 voices, and I don't see this happening. The No Deal. I think there will be other issues.
Other options available,
yeah.
right? Jessica.
The NHS needs to be top of your bill when you come to vote. You need to think about protecting its values, and you need to think about protecting not just EU citizens' health, but the health of everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you to my guests for coming along.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, we have to finish it because we've sadly come to the end of our program. But ladies and gentlemen, I hope this program has been of some help to you, and I hope that you will take whatever actions necessary to save our NHS and to ensure that you get the treatment that you deserve. Please write to your MP, putting your views forward. You can also drop us a line, and I'm happy to do another program on your behalf. Thank you very much for watching. Have a good night. See you again. Bye-bye.